All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this emergency special meeting of ANC6E to order. With that, I'll take the roll call from our secretary.
ANC 01.
Present.
02. 03. 04 here. 05.
Here.
06. 07.
Here. With that, we only have one item on our agenda tonight, which is why we're all here, to discuss the safety of the Shaw community. We will have Assistant Chief Green speak first with Commander Emerman, followed by Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen. And with that, I'll take a vote to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
It is passed. The way we're going to do this is we will have MPD talk, we will have the council member talk, we will allow the commission to ask its questions, and then I will open it up for the rest of the audience to ask their questions and participate in the conversation. I understand this is an emotional topic. There's a lot of us here tonight, so I would like to enforce a little bit of order about this discussion. Thank you all for being here. Assistant Chief.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me. I want to talk a little bit about kind of the state affairs in the city of Washington, D.C. As it pertains to crime and what we're seeing and some of the things that are affecting violent crime throughout our city. All right, so this is the population. This is a slide that we showed that kind of just shows how our deployments, we're in the right areas, but we do need to make improvements, of course, on some of our deployments. So we are constantly looking at different crimes, the people that are committing those crimes, the types of offenses, so that we are in the right areas. If you look at the population in the District of Columbia, it has grown about 100,000 residents. And this is between 2010 and 18 data that we collect. As you see that top line, the green line, 605,000 to around 702,000 residents. Calls for service have grown equally as far, about 125,000 additional priority calls for service that have grown over those years as well. And those are the red bars.
Can you speak up, please? There are a lot of people back here can't hear you.
My apologies. If you look at the red bar are priority calls for service, which have grown as well over the last 10 years. Starting, they've grown about 120,000 calls for service in the District of Columbia, which requires us to constantly look at our deployments, our calls for service. We're taking us about 6 minutes and 40 seconds to get to those calls for service about 10 years ago. Now we get those calls for service in 5 minutes, 20 seconds. All right? So our officers are on the beat. They're out there. There's always improvement that can be made. I just want to point this out. Violent crime, as in general. Now, I'm not talking about just shootings. I'm not talking about homicides. We know the District of Columbia has been challenged with violent crime, particularly homicides. Last year, and we'll talk about what we're seeing with shootings and how those are trending over the last couple of years as well. But if you look at from 2010 to 18, the overall violent crime has still come down in the city. All right? And those are just all violent crimes. Those are ADWs, that's all the mass of them. The problem right now is the serious violence, the shootings, the homicides. All right? Next slide. So here's where the city is as we speak today. Homicides are up 7%. We had 122 this time last year. This year we got 131 so far, 7% increase. Homicides were up last year, so we don't want to see that type of increase. We didn't want to see any increase this year. All right? Robberies, the other category that worries us, that lead to serious violence. That's up as well this year, as you can see. Robberies are up 9%. In the whole entire city, we've had 1,671 robberies. We had 1,527 this time last year. So violent crime as a whole in Washington, D.C., as of today, is up 1%. All right? Property crime categories are down. Theft is up. Theft is very challenging. We see a lot of thefts that occur on retail businesses. Washington D.C. is booming. We got a lot of Targets, a lot of Walmarts, we got a lot of 7-Eleven, Wawa's that are coming up. We see a large amount of thefts that go along with that. All right, so we work with those businesses to try to reduce that number. But it brings us just about where we were last year, which is not where we want it to be. As I said, we want it to trend down. So we're going to talk about some strategies and different things, different approaches that we're going to do, particularly here in the 3rd District, to bring the violent crime issue under control. Next slide. All right. This is a snapshot of citywide gunshot victims. Okay, when you look at that, you look at the homicide fatalities. 102 homicides thus far this year have occurred because of gun violence. Result of a gun. Non-fatals, we've had 29 people that were shot in some of those instances that did not die. The number I really want to concentrate on is the assaults with dangerous weapons. Because that's kind of what you see in your area. There's gunplay going on between these different crews. And crews are just folks that kind of migrate to a certain geographical area. And they're in that area usually because they either lived there at one point or they have relatives or family members, something like that, that drew them to that area. And now they have allegiance to that area. Okay? And that could be, I'm not going to say any specific, that could be 9th and S. The guys that hang at 9th and S, they could have an opposing group at 7th and S. Okay, 2 blocks away, we all went to school together, and now we're taking up guns over some of the silliest things, and we are resulting to violence. All right? That's kind of the challenge that you have in the District of Columbia with these crews that start to get in these violent confrontations, and we're left to deal with the shootings. All right? If you look at all right, illegal gun possession. Study criminal history of those arrested illegal gun possession, arrested violent gun offenses by Boston shows that you have to take, the bottom line is you have to take seriously, and you have to have penalties that are serious and change the behavior of people who you take illegal firearms off of. I can tell you that every Monday, every Thursday, the chief of police, myself, and all the other assistant chiefs and the commanders, we go over every crime that has occurred since the previous Thursday. And we do the same thing on Monday, the same thing on Thursday. And what I see the same names over and over and over again. People that we're arresting. You see them over and over again. Juveniles that we're arresting. So much so that I see their picture come up on the screen and I already know who they are. All right? 3D has had the shooting incidents that drew us all out here today, but we've also had a robbery problem in the 3rd District involving juveniles. All right? Commander Emerman his team has made 138 arrests this year so far for robberies. That's a lot. That's not all of them. We can always do better. But 78 of those arrests were juveniles. I got curious when I was seeing those names over and over again, and I started to reach out to some of the juvenile probation type agencies that deal with these children, okay, these juveniles. And I sent them a list of 29 names, and 20 of them came back as one of their clients, right? So they knew these people. These kids have been arrested before. All right? So when I say they look familiar, they are familiar because they're out here doing this over and over again. And we have to take serious the programming, the consequences for juvenile offenders. Okay? It's an unpopular topic, but when it comes to robberies, and somebody that's out here committing robberies over and over again, most of them are snatches. Some of them are force and violence where people are getting hurt. But in my opinion, that's how violent crime starts to get worse and worse and worse. So we have to have a system that changes that behavior. And I think that's something that all of us as citizens, forming a court watch group, working closely with your commander so that you know who's being arrested and you know what's happening to them. We had a juvenile, and I can't say any names, it's against the law. Females involved in this activity as well as the males. All right, committed 7 robberies. Had their whole plan, it was systematic. She was diverted. All right, her boyfriend was still out here committing robberies. We locked him up the other day. He's an adult. He will probably be held for a little while. I don't know if he's in or out. Stu can talk about that case. But those are the challenges that we see. Behaviors that are not being changed, and they're right back out here on the street. All right? The study on firearms, 70% of people that are arrested with a firearm and get back out on the street, 70% of them they're going to reoffend. That's what the study in Boston showed. They're going to reoffend, so we have to have effective, not punishment, but effective tools to change their behavior. All right? Right now, I don't think in the District of Columbia, when we're talking about gun crimes and the crimes that you all have experienced in this community, I don't think we have effective punishment or effective options that change these folks' behavior. Because all of them have been arrested before. All right? Next. This is citywide gun recoveries. As you can see in the 3rd district, we're serious about guns. We've taken 144 guns off the street in 3 days alone. That's a lot of guns in an area like this. And you have to think somebody's carrying a gun in their compression shorts, or they're carrying a gun in their waistband. That's not going to end well. Okay? But when we capture these folks, we need some effective solutions as to something that's going to change their behavior. Because we arrest some people over and over again for gun crimes here in the city. And that's just the truth. All right? Next. All right, there are currently the consequences of carrying a firearm. We just talked about that. We don't think that it's deterring the behavior in the District of Columbia. Amidst all of this, these stats and things that I'm talking to you about, we're being faced with things like the Sentencing Commission reducing the penalty for felons in possession. So this is somebody that's already been convicted, gets caught with another gun, and they're reducing the sentence that this person is going to have to endure. Now, they're going to reoffend when they get out on the street. I think we all, again, have to form an effective court watch team. We have to be active on all levels in the District of Columbia's government so that we are holding all the parts of the judicial system accountable for what's going on, what's happening, what laws are changing. Okay? The Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act. This was another law that has been passed where juveniles who have committed some very violent offenses are going to have their sentences reduced to 15 years. And they're going to get out. See this? I see people's faces. You got to pay attention to what's going on. And when this person gets out, and if this person's back in that same beef, because if they come back to the same area and they're hanging on that same corner, it's hard not to be. Okay? We got to pay attention to what's going on in the entire judicial system. What's going on with your elected officials? Are they expressing your beliefs? And if they are, that's fine. I just want to make it clear that these are some challenging things that we believe are going to make it even harder in terms of addressing public safety, in terms of securing the confidence of witnesses, in terms of victims feeling that this person that did this crime, their debt is being paid to society. All right? Thanks. I know one of the things that went out is MPD's budget. You know, MPD, the mayor, wanted to increase the budget to the point where she could hire 200 more police officers. She wanted all of those 200 officers to be exclusively footmen Segway mountain bike officers to enhance our ability to connect with the community. All right? That was not funded. Okay, that has to go through the city council. It was not funded to the point where we can hire those officers at this time. All right? Those are things you have to pay attention to what's going on. ERCOs, the extreme risk protection orders, or the red flag laws, as you will hear the media refer to it. That's a good thing. We're in support of that. All right? That's one of the latest things that have passed. It's not going to affect violent crime on the street, but it will help us to get mental health offenders off the street, get guns out of the hands of mental health offenders, probably some domestic violence issues possibly, where people can give information, go through the warrant process, and we can collect guns from people that are in those types of situations. We've had one successful case with that thus far. It's a relatively new law. Next. Again, tougher laws, gun traffic. People that come into our city and selling these kids, selling adults guns. The penalty needs to be severe. We all need to get a court-wide system together where we're paying attention to what these laws look like. And I'm not saying incarcerate somebody and throw away the key. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is the penalty has to change the behavior. All right? And what you will hear from the kids that we deal with out here on these streets, they have no fear of the judicial system. Okay? It doesn't mean we're going to stop locking them up, because we're going to keep doing what we have to do. We got overtime, we got some initiatives, we're moving cameras in the area, the commander will talk about all that to deal with the spike in the shootings that we've seen. We're putting more officers out here in this area as well. But for the long term, we got to change these people's behavior. And whether that's more effective supervision after they get out, more people on GPS where we know where they are, and penalties for being where you're not supposed to be. If you take a kid and he's arrested several times up here in the U Street corridor at 2 o'clock in the morning committing robberies, or an adult, maybe one of the conditions, he shouldn't be able to come over here if he lives clean across on the other side of the city. I need you to pay attention to what's going on in our city in terms of the laws, in terms of the different things that are being passed and not passed, and whether you think it would enhance our fight against violent crime or hinder it. All right, year to date in 6E, that's this area, we had no homicide. We had one that was very close to the border up the street. Commander will talk about that. We've had 13 ADWs. We've had 34 robberies. So those ADWs and those robberies are what we'll be talking about tonight. And those are the shootings and the violent crime that you all are seeing in this area. All right, so I'm going to bring Commander Emerman up to talk specifically about what is going on in this area in the 3rd District.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I hope everybody can hear me. I have a little bit more booming of a voice than the Assistant Chief. But firstly, thank you for having us here. We're unfortunate that we are here, because this is not something that we want to have to deal with in our community. So in the past week and a half, 2 weeks or so, we've had 3 major incidents that I know are on the hot minds of the community. That is our homicide that we had in the 600 block of S Street, the shooting we had in the 1700 block of 7th Street on Saturday, and then the shooting in the 700 block of P Street on Sunday. Those are the 3 shootings that we have in which a victim was struck. There's another incident involving sounds of gunshots on a speeding vehicle, but nobody, fortunately, was struck in that incident. All 3 of those, and including 4 if you count the other one. So all 4 of those are currently under investigation by our detectives. They are making progress. Some cases have more progress than others. A lot of it depends upon witnesses that we have on the scene of these shootings, cameras that we've had on the scene of these shootings, as well as our victims and what they know or what they saw or whether or not they're cooperative. So those are where we are with those cases right now. I am hopeful that we will make some more progress on those as we move along and bring those to closure. In the meantime, what we have done, the Assistant Chief has worked with me to get me approval from the Chief of Police for overtime to bring additional officers down here to the 3rd District. And those officers are in cars, they're on foot, they're on Segway, they're on bikes, they're on scooters, and they're also in unmarked and plainclothes operations. So some of these you should be seeing out there, some of them I'm hoping you won't see, because that's their job, is to be that way. So those officers are out here, they're deployed in the area, the general 7th Street corridor, spreading off as far up as Florida, and then as far south as I think about O Street, O Street that we pushed them down to, and then spreading out several blocks in each direction. These officers should not be just standing on one corner, should not be sitting in their car doing nothing. These officers should be out, moving around, being visible, being random, engaging the community. That is what solves crime, and that's what deters crime, is random, repeated police interactions. Sitting on the corner, what that does is just moves crime one corner away. So my officers are tasked with moving out and about and getting visible and making progress in the neighborhood. The Criminal Interdiction Unit, which is one of our plainclothes units from the Narcotics and Special Investigations Division, has been over here helping us as well. Those are the groups that hopefully you won't see. Working with our crime suppression teams, every district has a crime suppression team. Those are officers that are uniformed but in unmarked vehicles. What they do is they're not guys and gals that are answering the typical 911 calls, the accidents, the burglar alarms. Those are officers that are tasked with going to interdict into crime areas and going to address violent crime and removing guns off the street. We did move in response to the community's concerns as well as our concerns, a portable camera to the corner of 7th and S Street. That is just one resource that we have there. We continue to stress and we continue to push with our communities the Mayor's Camera Rebate Program. Keep in mind, MPD cameras are not live monitored. Those are there for response or critical incidents. So cameras that you have in your home are going to help us just as much as those are in the aftermath of a crime. So if you have one, if you're thinking about getting one, the Mayor's Program will give you a rebate towards the purchase and installation of that. It's a very simple process. You can go online. I'm sure people in this room have done it. You can tell the others, your neighbors about it, and get more people involved in that. Those cameras, usually a Ring camera or one of those cameras you put on your house, a Nest camera, is usually almost entirely covered by the rebate, and those cameras are very clear images. So we encourage everybody to get those and do those and take part in the program. The other thing that we're doing is outreach. With our outreach coordinator and our officers, we're working to get into our properties, into our businesses, into our residential high-rises, and talk with owners about what they're doing there as far as inside their own properties, with security, with cameras, and then outreach that we do with the residents and the neighbors in the community. Trying to get folks to speak to the officers, to get that trust of the officer, to trust the officers, but to be a part and understand that we're a part of the community and we want to work with them. As Chief pointed out, juvenile crime is a very big thing for us here. As you saw, unfortunately, we had a juvenile who was shot on Sunday, and our best lookout right now is juveniles as young as 14 years of age. That's a problem. A 14-year-old with a gun is a problem. And, you know, we've talked about it, you know, to great extent. We need to reach those kids. We need to get those kids to understand that, A, not only is that activity of walking around with that gun inappropriate, there is a serious punishment for it. And unfortunately, that message isn't getting out there. You know, Chief talked about the 144 guns that we've gotten in the 3rd District this year. In Ward 6, in ANC6A, the 3rd District portion of it, there's a little sliver of it down in 1D, we've gotten 21 arrests for gun crimes in ANC6E in the 3rd District. Of those 21 in this year, one of them is still in jail. And he's pending sentencing. 5 of them, to include that one, pled guilty. And all the other 4 are back out. We have 6 that are pending cases. They're on the streets right now. The fear of the judicial system and of the court system is not there. There is no fear that you're going to get serious time or you're going to be in jail for a long time. And that's the message that we have to get out to these kids and to these adults who have these guns out there. If you have one, you know somebody in your household who has one, or you know a family member or as a friend who has one, let us know. Turn it in. Get it off the street. The problem is when people have that gun and they think they're tough and they think they can rob someone and they think they can go confront somebody who's got a problem, a neighborhood beef or a petty dispute, that's one thing. But when they don't realize is when they pull that trigger, that bullet hits someone or something. Either the person they're aiming at or the person 2 blocks down the street walking the child in a stroller. Or it goes through the window while somebody's sleeping. There is nothing worse of a feeling for me on a crime scene 600 block of S Street, when I saw how many bullets we had out on that scene, is looking around and looking at windows to see who might have gotten one in that door we have to go knock on now to make sure everybody's okay inside that house. We know we have a homicide victim on the street, but we don't know what's going on in those houses because there's so many bullets on our street because someone recklessly, foolishly, and stupidly pulled that trigger. So we are getting, as Chief pointed out, more guns off the street than we did last year, and we're continuing to do that. But there are too many on the street and too many people willing to pull them out and use them. Is there another slide or is that the last one? So this is what we always go back to is talk to us, tell us. The community is the eyes and ears of the police department. You see everything out there. You can call us, you can text us, you can stay anonymous, whatever makes you happiest, but understand, if you're anonymous and we can't reach you, then we're not going to be able to get additional information that we need to get from you. So that's something to keep in mind. But we'll take the information any way we can get it. So you can text it to us. Anything that you think is suspicious or criminal, I tell everybody, call us, let us know. That's what we're here to do, is to come figure out if that is in fact criminal or suspicious. Let us come out and deal with that. If you have city service issues, some things you'll realize, crime may take place in a certain area because the street lights are all out. The trees are overgrown, blocking the street lights, making it a dark street or a dark alley or an area that is going to be conducive to criminal activity. Get with 311. Report those issues to get the government, the DDOT, and DPW, and all those other agencies out there to fix that, to get those lights back on. If you have if you have just issues that need to be addressed by the government, let us work on those. But you got to let them know. And then we talked about the camera program and then getting informed. We have a Yahoo group. I know everybody hates Yahoo, but we have a Yahoo that is a community blog. We put out information on that blog to keep the community informed. As the Chief talked about, we post every day our crime in the 3rd District and our arrests in the 3rd District. So if you are part of an association or an ANC or just somebody who wants to keep track of that, all of our arrests are posted on there. It is all public information. Our adult names are on there. So you have that ability to track those cases through the court system. So you can look and see, hey, this guy got locked up. That's information that the community wants to have. So as we work towards it, we definitely need the community's help. We're out there, we've got officers out there. I know we get a great support from our community, but we need so much more from everybody. And we're working on it. I assure you that our officers are out there actively doing what we need them to do. And hopefully we can get these guns off the street, get these individuals in jail, in the system, and bring this issue under control. I think the council member is up next.
Yes, you're all set?
I'm all set.
All right, next we're going to hear from Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen, and then again we'll follow it up with commission questions first. So, Councilmember, please.
All right, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Can folks in the back hear me okay? All right. Thank you for coming out. Thank you, 6E, for hosting this. Thanks, everybody, coming out. I know that for some as well, tonight is Yom Kippur, so thank you for folks who either broke their fast or broke their plans to be here tonight. This is an important conversation, so thank you. I want to talk a little bit about some of the big term and some of the long-term strategies, as well as talk about the short term. I want to tell you that I have found, and I hope you have as well, Commander Emerman, to me, is one of our best commanders. He's somebody we text at midnight, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I find him to be very responsive, work very hard in this neighborhood, and I think his officers do so as well. I can tell you, coming here tonight, I saw our officers and on bike within the neighborhood, and I think that was something that a lot of neighbors were asking for, to be able to see that. So I really appreciate Commander Emerman making sure he had his teams out and deployed in a way that was trying to be responsive to some of the concerns they were hearing. I'm very sorry about what is bringing us out tonight, but let me talk through a couple of things that are going on. At the council, so not only as a Ward 6 council member, I also chair the council's Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety for the last 2.5 years or so. So I'm going to talk through a couple of the steps we've been taking, trying to focus on making sure that we are a safe city, we are a just city, and then also talk about some of the immediate pieces that we've got. In the last 2 years, we've done a couple of different things. We've done everything from expand. I worked with the chief to be able to expand our senior police officer program. For folks that may not know about this, this is making sure that we have our experienced officers and detectives who are able to stay on the force longer. We have essentially kind of a retirement bubble that is working its way through our force. And we want to be able to make sure we use some of that expertise and not lose that. And so we've been able to do that, and that took effect just last week on October 1st with more of an extension around that. We've also, in the last 2 years, stood up something called the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. The idea behind that is that we're trying to focus on our violence prevention and violence intervention work. I've also tripled the funding that goes into that because that's trying to get at some of the root causes, deep causes that create the conflict and the violence. So rather than reacting once the violence has taken place, try to be on the front end and prevent the violence from taking place in the first place. And I can talk more about some of the efforts that I've talked to the director about for on the short term. We've also looked at our laws. So DC has some of the toughest gun laws on the books, but we've also gone and made them tougher. So for example, we have seen extended magazine clips. When you go to a shooting, as the chief and as the commander said, we're seeing more and more shell casings that'll be at a scene. So we've increased penalties, increased the consequences when you have an extended magazine clip that is used. There is only one purpose when you have an extended magazine clip, and that is to put more bullets in the air to do more harm in a shorter amount of time. So we are working to make sure we have that, and we put that in place over the last year. We've also worked to have the Cure the Violence model. For some people who may be familiar with this, this is again similar to what the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement is working on. Cure the Violence is a tested and proven program that works to intervene on the front end, and that program is actually worked through the Attorney General's office. So we have two offices, the Attorney General and we have the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. They're working in concert on a lot of these efforts. On the more immediate and short term, so you heard the commander already talk about putting in the light towers. We've added more funding to MPD's budget to put more light towers and cameras up in place, so he's been able to move that temporary piece as well. That's not going to be a permanent solution, but again, it's trying to be responsive immediately, and I appreciate the commander working to be able to put that in place. You heard talk about the private security camera program. I created that about 2 years ago. I think the mayor's done a great job of running that program. In terms of DC government, it is one of the most efficient programs. People say that folks will come out to their house and they get their rebate check about a week later. That's kind of unheard of for DC government. Okay? So I'm really glad that's working well. If you have that, thank you. If you do not have that, I encourage it. The rebate, as the chief said, covers pretty much the entire cost of that. MPD uses that information. It's not, you're not live feed, you're not connecting your camera into MPD's hardcore central system, but you are providing the ability for MPD to come knock on your door, ask what type of evidence you have. Those cameras have been used to focus on homicides, to package thefts. They provide invaluable information that the detectives and ultimately prosecutions use. So again, I saw somebody handing out flyers about that, so I encourage you to be able to do that. I also talked with our Director of Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. So that, again, it's ONSE is what it's called. It's about 1.5 years old, and what we're trying to do, again, is this violence prevention work. We've expanded the funding, they're expanding their contracting, and what I've asked them to do is evaluate the neighborhood here to see what type of additional supports they can put in place through that program. They are very close to being able to bring on additional staff. The council, the district works on a fiscal year that starts October 1st, so that was last week. So the funding that went in just now took effect about a week ago. So they're looking to use some of that funding, and I've asked them to make sure they're putting a focus right here in this neighborhood so they have that focuses again on having people with deep connections within a neighborhood, deep connections in a community to have that credibility to go in and help work on violence prevention and violence intervention. I want to talk also just for a minute because we are great partners with NPD, but even partners will sometimes push and pull on each other a little bit, right? So one of the things that you saw up on the slide spoke about what's called IRA, the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act. And some of the information, all due respect to my partner, the chief, is not correct when we talk about what is our role with our victims. The law does not prohibit the judges to be able to consider a victim and the nature of an offense and what took place. I have read the reviews from judges. They very much talk about and take into consideration the victim's statements, survivor statements. They take into consideration the original offense. In some cases, what the judge does is they deny it. We have so far had about 20 individuals. What the law does, it was passed 2.5 years ago, it allows the court to be able to do a review of someone after they have served 15, 20 years. After a rigorous, exhaustive review, the judge can decide, is this person still a risk to public safety or not? And in some cases, they have said this person is no longer a risk to public safety. In some cases, they have support from victims and survivors themselves that want to have them resentenced. In other cases, they are not convinced, and they do not support having that person released, and they go back to prison. The individuals that have been released, not a single one has reoffended. They are all middle-aged men at this point, And many of them are actively working in violence prevention and intervention. They have a credibility to be able to go into a community in a way that I certainly never will, to be able to try to stop the very same person that they used to be, to stop that young person from committing that crime. So we can certainly wrestle with our policy decisions, but I do want to be very accurate in describing what this is and what this isn't. I'll lastly talk about something that I think is very important, and I do believe MPD and I absolutely agree on this. You saw Commander Emerman talk about the guns that have been recovered. MPD has done a great job of pulling guns off the street. So far this year, I think we have about 2,100 or so overall. We average about 2,000 a year of illegal guns that are taken off the street. What happens after that, I think, is a very big problem. We have a very divided system within our judicial system. You heard some conversation about that. The prosecution decisions are not locally accountable. We write the laws. We don't get to decide how a prosecution moves forward. So when an illegal gun is taken off the street, when someone has an illegal gun, then that decision is made by the U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney's Office makes that decision about, are they prosecuting? Are they dropping? Are they pleading down? What is the resolution of that? We have asked repeatedly, over and over and over again, to share the data, help us understand what is happening, because I hear the same thing that the officers do. They will pull an illegal gun off the street, and they will see the person right back out again. That is frustrating to the officers, it is frustrating to the community, and then that undermines the confidence that the tough laws that we have in place and all the systems that we have are not working. And I think that's an important part, because I find that that goes into a black hole. We held a hearing last week focused on gun trafficking and gun violence. Invited the U.S. Attorney's Office to come testify, to be a partner with that. NPD was there, did a great job of helping answer questions, talk about what's going on. USAO didn't show up. That's not a partner. And we need to make sure that we're working on that. Again, NPD and I, we are partners. We're not going to agree on every issue. We push and pull on each other. We challenge each other. But there's no doubt that we share the exact same goal, which is to have a safe city and to focus on public safety. But we're able to sit down at the same table and have those conversations. Every one of our partners has to be able to do that as we work towards the type of public safety that we want. And I'll end with one other piece, and that is talking about another piece of legislation that I passed through the council, and that's the red flag law. Again, respectfully disagree with the chief when he said it's not going to impact violent crime. I believe that it will. The red flag law helps get guns off our streets. I have been to too many vigils where I hear a grieving mother or grandmother talk to her neighbors and say, you know this gun is in this community. You know somebody has a gun. We've got to get it out of that hand, get it out of the home before somebody does harm to themselves or does harm to their others. And that's exactly what the red flag law is designed to do. In the district, we have a very different red flag law than you see in other parts of the country. Theirs is focused on legal guns. We don't actually have it. Firearms here in the District of Columbia, so ours focuses also on illegal guns. It is very difficult to ask mom or grandma to call the police on their son or grandson who has a gun. The red flag law creates an avenue by which that family member, that loved one who knows a gun is there and knows harm can take place, can go in and help get that gun out. It is one more tool in the toolbox. If we try to focus on just one lever, as we would focus on public safety, this will not work. We have to push on all the levers at the same time. And it takes a comprehensive approach, and that's part of what we're trying to do as we work on this, again, with our partners, which includes MPD, which includes you, which includes the nonprofits, which include a lot of the providers, all throughout this community, throughout the city. So I want to help share that update with you. Be happy to, I think we're going to turn now to questions. So.
Yes, yeah, we're going to do
So happy to be able to answer your questions, and I'll stick around for as long as you are here as well to help answer your questions. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to look to the commission to ask some questions. Commissioner Ponderow.
Thank you. I've represented this community as an ANC Commissioner now for 19 years. At the beginning of my service, the neighbors called this the Wild Wild West. Because on any given day, you could have a shootout between crews in broad daylight, much less the sounds of gunfire ringing out through much of the night. Through a lot of hard work on the part of MPD and the community and other stakeholders, over the course of those almost 20 years, we've been able to get crime down to what was, until very recently, a dull roar. One of the most important things that MPD did for many years was to have dedicated foot beats along 7th and 9th Streets with officers that engage with the community. And that means knocking on doors and talking to business owners and talking to kids on the street and talking to the homeless and talking to, the folks that don't have anything to do. Those interactions were incredibly valuable in being able to have a neighborhood where we residents and our visitors could feel comfortable going out in day and night. And the result is that we now have one of the neighborhoods that are the most attractive to live, to work, to shop, to play, and to pray in the entire city. That also has meant that now we have more people that have realized that there are more affluent people in the neighborhood that are potential victims of crime. And at the beginning of this year, the 3rd District stopped putting foot beats on the street. And almost immediately, we could see a sense of lawlessness growing in the neighborhood. You saw crowds, mobs of usually men varying in age, but usually on the younger side, smoking marijuana. You had folks, drinking in these mobs and having basically open-air parties. You saw an increase in public urination and defecation. We saw an increase in drug transactions taking place in broad daylight. And now most recently, we've started seeing the return of what appear to be crews. Whether those are drug-related crews or others, I will leave to MPD to determine. This sense of lawlessness has to be brought under control. MPD did it once before by having a community policing model that meant that there were officers that everyone in the community got to know and to trust and to be partners with in reducing especially violent crime, but all kinds of crime in the community. A lot of you that are longer time residents will remember Officer Berlin, who at various times had 9th Street and also 7th Street as his beat. They called him RoboCop. He was an outstanding exemplar of what a community foot-beat officer is. We need more RoboCops back on the streets in our neighborhood. Now, I understand that more recently, 3D has started, deploying some foot beats again. To be honest with you, I haven't seen them. Hopefully some of you have. But we need to have that regular presence, that visible presence of officers on foot, not sitting in cars, interacting with all of us, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a resident, whether you're a visitor, whether you're a homeless individual. You need to have officers that you can rely on and who you know are there to be able to bring this sense of lawlessness that we have in this neighborhood currently back under control. And we also have to do something that we've been hearing from MPD this evening, and that is to get more involved in providing the type of victim and community impact statements that sentencing judges can take into consideration when they're determining how long someone that has been arrested gets to stay in jail and out off of our streets. I did invite the 3rd District representative for the U.S. Attorney's Office to be here this evening. Unfortunately, she was recovering from an illness and wasn't able to be here. We hope to have her at the meeting on October 21st that we'll be having as a follow-up. But whether you're a direct victim of a crime, or you are just a community resident that is experiencing fear of being able to go out on your own street because of the shootings that have taken place or of other crimes that are taking place in the neighborhood. Whether you're a senior who's seen it all and is fearing for your safety because of things that are coming back, those kinds of first-person testimonies could make a difference in terms of whether or not some of these people that are making our lives miserable today stay in jail longer once they're arrested. So more on that later. But I would like all of us to collectively ask the 3rd District and MPD to bring back foot beats that we will be able to see on a regular basis. Foot beats now. Foot beats now. Foot beats now. Foot beats now. Foot beats
All right, so
now.
can I interject before we have a demonstration? We're going to get more foot beats out. We're going to get officer visibility up in this area. That's one of the initiatives that we're going to do with the overtime officers. We've also combined resources with some of the other districts as well and aren't seeing this type of spike. So you may even see cars that are down here patrolling that aren't from Greedy, all right? Just to increase that presence. And you will have mountain bike officers that I encourage you to engage with, because I'm going to be telling Commander Emerman to have them engage with you. He already covered that they will be going into the businesses. We'll be deploying more cameras in strategic areas in the 3rd District as well. So we hear you, and we look forward to working with the community to help get this spike in violence, make this go away, and to also close some of these cases that have occurred in your community.
So if I could also interject, Commissioner, our foot beats never went away. So we still do deploy officers on foot. What we have done, unfortunately, though, is sometimes we have to enlarge their patrol areas. Sometimes they have to cover more area. One of the things that the chief put up on that slide that you saw is we have more calls for service. And unfortunately, sometimes that requires us to put more officers into cars. So that does sometimes reduce the number of foot beat officers. That being said, some, as we know from Officer Berlin, are much better at it than others. So if I put an officer out who's a foot beat officer who's not the best at that sort of position, that sort of interaction and engagement, that's something that you're going to see reflected in an officer who's not going to be as engaging and who's not going to be as visible out there. Unfortunately, I would have loved a gazillion Officer Berlins on foot beat. He resigned. He left the department. But I can't control that. So, part of that mayor's budget, as the chief pointed out, was to bring in 200 more officers to be on those foot beats, to be on those community outreach, to be in those small areas where we can get them out engaging the community. But we've never gotten rid of our foot beats. We still have foot beats, mountain bikes, segways, all out and about. You may not be seeing them as often, and that's something that we, as the chief said, we need to work on, but they are out there.
Commissioner Niagara.
Hi everyone, I'm Commissioner Niagara. I represent 6E04, the southern part of ANC6E. Thank you to my constituents who came tonight. So I second Commissioner Padro's request for additional foot patrols. I think that would be most helpful, especially down. I kind of figured my area is a little bit forgotten, but not totally forgotten. We don't have as much action down in the southern part, but still we have our issues. But my specific concern I want to address with Councilmember Allen. You talked about partnership. The Department of Parks and Recreation has a lousy partnership with the community, specifically with the Kennedy Recreation Center, the N Street Park, the New Jersey No Street Park, and there's a lot of land which is across from my area, Kirby and New York Avenue. These are government-owned property, they are poorly maintained, and they are crime magnets, period. I am left speechless by what happens at Kennedy Recreation Center. The trash, the garbage, the drug use, it is unbelievable. People do not want to walk past that recreation center. They don't want to go into the N Street Park. I have constituents afraid on Kirby because of that empty lot, which is all government owned. So you've heard me complain for literally years, and nothing is done. So I implore you to do something with DPR because they don't. We have a group of employees called the Rangers. As far as I'm concerned, they don't do anything. Honestly, they don't. We have a group of employees that visit the parks every day. I don't know what they do. I'm like little, they call me Ranger Nigro. I go with these parks, I pick up trash, I pick up alcohol bottles, whatever else I do, but I'm not employed by them. So I don't know what to say to you as our council member, how to get DPR to maintain and protect their properties. I had a constituent assaulted a couple weeks ago because he was walking past the Kennedy Recreation Center and people were on their grounds at midnight and they threw stuff at him and bricks and all this and yelled at him. But the fact is, that property was supposed to be locked. It wasn't. And then after the fact, the director of DPR said, "Oh, now we're going to lock the property." That's an example of they do not maintain or care for their property. And then the people who are the baddies are like, "Let's just go hang out at the rec station or the Street Park." So do something, Charles. I mean, I don't say anymore about that.
Thank you, Commissioner and Ranger member.
Yes.
So when it comes to the partnership, you're 100% correct.
Lousy.
That you have to have other agencies pull their weight and be a partner in this. Think of Kennedy Rec Center, for example. The number of times I've talked to the DPR director and tried to have the DPR staff go to the O Street side and stop public drinking, littering, open grills, they won't do it.
Well, why not?
What I'm told from the DPR staff is that the DPR staff feels understaffed, or they feel that they're anxious about doing that. We have to have this. I've talked with the city administrator about this. Now, obviously, as the legislative branch of government, DPR doesn't answer to me; they answer to the mayor. But you have to have the city administrator who helps set the tone and helps direct the different agencies to do their work. But in terms of what we expect out of everybody, I think it's important to note we expect an incredible amount, and I think actually an unfair amount, from these guys. We ask our police officers to be mental health and behavioral health specialists. We ask them to work on substance use disorders. We ask them to work on housing. We ask them to work on poverty. We ask them to work on all these other issues. There is no way that the officers are able to do all of that. We have to have more partnerships and more parts of our government pulling its weight. That's why we do all the other things as well. We put money and programming into behavioral health, into DPR for programming. We do all of that to help push that because we cannot look only to MPD. They're an incredibly important partner in this, incredibly. But we ask a lot of them, and it's unfair to ask them to be all these other things. We have to have all the other pieces of government working on that.
Honestly, I'll be honest with you. So those people that
Always
DPR, yes, don't respond or don't get the car, those people need to be fired. I have.
Oh, yes.
I'm talking about they're not doing their job. I just, we talk about the people in the rec center and all this. I don't know what to say anymore. Do your job and help protect your properties that you work at. I don't want to go to the recreation center because I might get beat on the head or whatever help. I don't want to smell marijuana everywhere. When you walk down O Street, like the constant, because when they're in the basketball court and all that, I got it over to Kirby on that lot that DPR owns. It is a bonfire drug fest almost every night. That is government-owned property.
So let's bring DPR to this meeting as well, because they need to be held accountable for what they do.
Frank Wiggins, Commissioner for 6E. First of all, I want to thank Councilmember Allen for being here. Captain, Assistant Chief Marine, Commander Emerman, Captain Kim.
Speak up, please.
First of all, I want to thank them all for coming because I feel quite comfortable reaching out to any one of them at any given time. And whenever I reach out to them, they're very responsive. So I do want to, number one, concur what has been said and not be redundant. But I also want those under the listening ear to also feel comfortable reaching out to the police department. When you see something, as Metro said, you got to say something. You have to not just to complain to your neighbor, to someone. You need to call the MPD. Oftentimes when we have these meetings once a month on the first Tuesday of each month, they tell us when we get more ticks, we can be more responsible, more aware of what's going on in that particular neighborhood. So it's critically important that those of you who are here tonight make your business. If you see something, don't just keep it to yourself and complain about it. Call MPD, call the WART commander, get on mpddc.gov, find out who your rep is, and call that person and let them know this is what you saw. Get on your neighborhood app, but don't just sit on it. Share the information. I want to thank you for 2 weeks ago, Captain Kim, in our ANC meeting. I asked you to get a camera. When I came back from out of town traveling, I was very pleased to see this camera at 7th and S. Because my experience at Kennedy Playground, when we had the camera put there, along with the tent, it actually wiped out a lot of the activity that took place even when after this Bliss lost her life there. So I appreciate your presence, but we do need your continued support. One other thing I wanted to mention as well, Councilmember, you mentioned the IRA, Incarceration Reduction Act. Is it possible that we can dispatch or call into support or a partnership with these gentlemen who were incarcerated, who are now do-gooders, that they can be used to communicate to these young men who are not inspired to get employment? We have First Class that's ran by Mr. Madison right across the street. They actually help people get jobs in the very neighborhood that are still on the street doing nothing. But what if we use these same gentlemen? Because part of this is the spirit of man. If the spirit of man is not cultivated, if it's not being nurtured, then what happens, they, for whatever reason, break down the family unit, whatever causes them to not be inspired to do well, just hang out on the street. What if we can use those gentlemen or that resource in this particular neighborhood to get them to talk to these young men who can be reached?
100% agree. That is part of what those men are doing. Why don't I follow up with you after the meeting too to be more specific about where they can be engaged in the way what you're talking about. But several of those men are employed in violence interruption, violence prevention, specifically the way you're describing. Let's talk also about how we can make that micro level right here in the neighborhood.
I think that will be needed. It'll be one way of us attacking this particular issue, because what we don't want is to crowd this room tonight and 2 weeks later, because I warned Captain Kim about a week before their shooting, if we don't get our arms around it. We've been communicating for the past 3 weeks about this growing threat in this neighborhood. And I actually said that somebody's going to lose their life. And unfortunately, somebody, from what I'm hearing, somebody did at 7th and S. I don't know if that's correct. So we don't want to hear another person losing their life because of this. So I concur with Ms. Nigro. This marijuana coming out my front door of my house, this marijuana in the street, it's not something I want to be exposed to. Something we can do about that. Ever since this marijuana law was passed, I think everybody here can testify they can smell marijuana in the street. And you feel as though police are not going to come out because it could be coming out of somebody's home. And so this is not against the law, it's smoking in your home. But when you smell it infiltrating your streets, it's very discomforting. And my thing, I want to find solutions to the problem. I want people to be able to stay in this Shaw neighborhood and feel at peace and not feel as though they got to move out of Shaw and find a sense of safety.
Do we have any other questions from the commission? Well, with that, I'd like to open it up to the audience.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
My name is Emerman West.
Oh,
I
sir.
lived
Go ahead,
in
sir.
Detroit Park, owned and lived in Detroit Park for over 40 years. And I want to say, not to take away from this discussion, I have seen this increase in lawlessness that's being referenced surge in the last 5 to 10 years. And most particularly on the weekends, from all of the people who come into this area to Shaw, Detroit Park, and who are involved in all types of lawlessness, and who are welcomed, and who also spill over into Detroit Park and bring that lawlessness, there. I live on 5th and U Street Northwest. I have people, I had to put up a big fence because of people coming in for commercial purposes or entertainment and coming in my backyard and publicly on my private property pissing. I'm just saying, let's look at the whole picture in terms of what's going on in this area. Don't focus, and stereotype and stigmatize one particular group. Look at the whole picture.
Amen.
I'm more concerned about this and it's really dangerous, okay? I've had the people doing vandalism to my car, they broke into my van, truck. They heaved in front of my house and actually attacked like the back gate of my house because we put up a no parking sign. Those things piss me off, definitely. However, I'm more concerned about the guns, the assault and deadly weapons. All of those things, violence, those are the things that I'm scared of. That's what I want homelessness to go.
My name is Alex Heidenberger. I own two businesses in this district. I worked with Commander Emerman last year, and you know, I think overwhelmingly that the number one feeling we all have in this room is fear. We had a shooting out front of 801 last year, November. It involved a legal marijuana store that was right next to us, and I reached out. I was a gnat. I bugged the hell out of you. I commend you guys and how you handled that. You gave me great direction. But what it seems like to me, just from my perspective as a business owner, that we as a community need to take this fear and weaponize it so that we can get our voices to the police. All we have to do is support them. Get them the money that they need from our elected officials so that they can get those officers on the street. They've submitted it. The mayor hasn't done anything about it. We have to be more vocal in these ANC meetings, put the pressure on our elected officials so that we get the action that we need. Ultimately, I emailed the mayor's office, the AG, and finally, they raided the place. I emailed them twice. I saw a guy walk out, had a gun underneath his jacket. They followed up with me. They're very, very, very good about following up. You just have to keep bugging them. And until they get more resources, it's not going to speed up. So just from my perspective, they're doing a great job. It's just they don't have enough people on with their resources. And personally, as a business owner, I want to do all I can to support these guys. I'd love to have an officer standing on my block every night of the week because I know that those kids that are shouldering people when they're walking out of the bars, like, I can't do anything about that. They're young kids. I'm not a cop. I recognize the kids every single week. It's the same group of kids. It's not hard to figure it out. But they can't do anything. We have to be the ones that push this to them.
Hi guys, so I'm Dory. I'm with Monsignor Action DC. I'm a volunteer, but most importantly, I'm a mother whose son goes to Barbara Chambers Children's Center in the Lincoln Westmoreland building, where there was a bullet through the window back in May. And it's only a matter of time before that shooting happens during the day when my child and their parents' kids are in these centers. There are a couple things I want to say, but I also want to ask a question, and I want to commend the councilman. You've been incredibly responsive this week and always. Also, thank you to the ANC for holding these meetings. It's really important that people feel like they have a voice. In particular, I just want to caution against trying to police our way out of this. Police are so important and so critical, but it is not the only answer. And I don't want to police I don't want to live in a police state. And I'm pretty sure the people who do not have good experiences with police also don't want that. So I want to just caution all of us to be careful in our reaction to this, that it doesn't become that we are asking for police to do the job that we need. Ones, we need DPR, we need all of these organizations that need to work together to provide opportunities, to provide jobs. A wider circle was supposed to be here tonight. I reached out to them. They have a new job training center on 7th. You know, I want to be sure that we are not asking the police to do all of the work here, and I think the councilman put a point on that. It's going to take all of us working together, providing opportunity for everybody in the neighborhood. I don't think it's a sense of lawlessness. I think it's a sense of desperation and frustration over gentrification and over how the people in the city have been treated. And if we, you know, get it off the streets here, if we have the footfalls here, where does it go? Because it's going to go somewhere if we're not actually addressing the root of the problem. That said, my kid's in daycare every day here in Shaw. I live in Bloomingdale, so I'm in 5, excuse me. But what are you doing to work with Logan Shaw, Resettlement, Barbara Chambers, and the other schools in the area to make sure, and I know, Commander, you work with our director Maria a lot, but what are you doing to work with the schools to make sure all of the students are safe as we are dealing with all of this crap?
We have, in addition to the 3rd District officers that patrol your communities, every district has what we call school resource officers. And those are officers that are assigned to our schools. They're assigned primarily to the high schools and the middle schools, but they also address the elementary schools as well as the public charter schools. And those officers go in and out of those buildings throughout the day. They check on the staff, they check on the students, and they respond to calls for service that come in for those specific locations. In addition to that, at the end of the day, what we do with some of our larger size schools, that some of the elementaries are in those areas, is we do a program called Safe Passage. And that's where we use our school resource officers to staff and to patrol the areas between those schools and our mass transit hubs, our metro stations, our areas where we know students go to get their way home or where students go to congregate after school. So we have officers that are out there that are doing that. If there's a specific concern in any specific school, absolutely, if they reach out to us, we can get one of our school resource supervisors in there to talk to them if they have a specific concern about it. But anytime we have any incident in one of our schools, we send one of our school resource officers in addition to our patrol units out there to address it.
My name is Patricia Trim, and I don't really need a microphone. I'm loud enough. I've been in this neighborhood for more than 40 years. I was in working with past ANC person in getting some of the mom and pop stores closed on Sunday and stopped selling marijuana through their side door and beer and wine or whatever. But now it's like, here we are. We got a beer garden on every corner. We got marijuana. Sure, you are going to say marijuana is legal for whatever the purpose, but you try telling the 12 or 13 or 14-year-old that. They don't listen to their parents, so why are they going to listen to that? So a lot of what we've actually done in the city is perpetrated a fraud. You did this with your loosening the rein. A beer garden open on Sunday. Church is open on Sunday. Okay? You can't get people in church, but you can get them in the beer garden. When we have parties in the neighborhood, the people who have been elected are drunker than the people who are elected. You got started, and you already drunk. Then you come here and tell me the reason why there's no mayor office or whoever is not here. You already perpetrated the fraud. You started it when you came in the door. You didn't bring enough people with you. And you didn't have it in a large enough place. Because you already know. And it's time to look at the affluence. Oh, we're going to show up. But I got my window shot into. I live on the 5th floor of an apartment building. My window was shot up. Just so happy I was praising God. Had my Bible laid down, trying to think of a song to sing to the Lord before I went to bed. Came in my window, went into my wall. I haven't heard a word about it. Once that happened, they came and they looked. That was it. I never heard about it, and nobody said anything to me after that. As a matter of fact, the apartment building, what was that, about 4 months ago? The apartment building just put in a new Venetian blind last week. And the window just got fixed about 3 weeks ago. 4 months. I'm a child of the Most High God, and nobody can be more fluent than me. And I will not tolerate coming up in here with all of the government and their fallacies, and all of the people talking about whatever it is you can't blame it all on these little kids. These little kids have suffered. A lot of them dealing with parents who are addicted, people stressed out, can't handle life. Come on now. It's time for us to wake up. Wake up.
Yeah, I wanted to just make sure that I think we were introduced the reps from the mayor's office that are here. there are some representatives from the mayor's office if you all want.
Okay, well, okay, that's fine.
I know we also have a member here from the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, as well as a member of Councilmember Joe's office. So please, if you could introduce yourself briefly.
Good evening. My name is Michaela Farrell. I'm one of the Ward 6 liaisons in Mayor Bowser's Office of Community Relations and Services. I see a bunch of familiar faces. To those who do not know me, I work with residents across the ward, particularly in this part of the neighborhood, on some of those issues like we were talking about. If streetlights are out, you see a pothole in the neighborhood. I've talked to some of you all over the phone, over email, and about violence in the community. So I'm here as a resource. I can give you my phone number if you all want to take it down. My number is 202-538-1241. I'll be here after the meeting to answer any of those questions that you have for us.
Like I said, she can be ribbon cuttings and all that,
Yeah.
she can't come here.
That is Ward 4.
And I am one of the mayor's eyes and ears in the community here, and I take it back to our...
But you can't remember everything everybody says, so how you gonna take it all?
And I definitely hear you, and I'm happy to sit down and talk with you and hear some of your specific concerns and bring that back to some of our leaders.
What happened to the truancy?
Where
What happened to the curfew?
So
What happened to the truancy? The kids, these 15-year-old kids.
still have that now. We've actually picked up more curfew violators this year than we did last year, and in the entire of last year. And it's only October right now.
What's the curfew?
Curfew is 11 o'clock on weekdays, midnights on weekends.
I get right there, 7
Before we continue the line of questioning, let's get through the other.
Can she repeat her telephone number and her name, please?
Yeah, sorry, please.
My name is Julia Irving, and I have the honor of serving as the Director of the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, and I am here on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser. I am taking notes along with Michaela, and tomorrow I will be debriefing the mayor on all of the concerns that are brought here, as well as our Deputy Mayor of Public Safety and Justice and our other leaders within the district government.
School leaders too?
Ma'am.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nkenga Garrett. I am here representing the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We have implemented public health approaches to violence. I know you all have a lot of concerns, so I won't delve into all of it, but I will be here after the meeting. I have brochures, I have my card, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you about some of the programs that we offer.
Good evening, my name is Randall Strickland. I'm the Deputy Director at the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Nkenga is one of our staff, our program analysts, who works specifically on prevention and intervention. We also have one of our community prevention and intervention specialists here as well, Mr. Dotson Roby. I have cards. Dotson may have cards as well. I'd be happy to distribute cards and talk with folks about the things that we're doing. We actually serve 20 specific we have violence and prevention in 20 specific communities, but we are tasked to serve the entire city. And we do that in 5 different areas. And I won't take up time here, but I'd be happy to talk to people about the ways that we have been chartered and tasked to serve the city around violence prevention, violence intervention, and violence response.
Yes, sir.
Hello everyone, Clayton Rosenberg. I'm a first responder and violence interrupter with the Alliance of Concerned Men. We have experience working in this community as we brokered the truce between 5th and 7th back when it was real gang violence. Back in But as I hear everyone talking, a lot of the time that we broke in the truth, it wasn't the police, it was the community. We had the community come in here, the community-based organizations really went in the community, went to those gang members, those crews, because a lot of the time the police officers can't approach them a certain way and get results. You have to have people that look like them, from them, that they understand and they can respect. And a lot of these people that we had on our team, yeah, they were formerly incarcerated. They had the level of respect in the community, but we got the results. Those same students and with those same crew members, we took to American University to create a conflict resolution line. And they came out of this community, 5th and 7th and 0. So it's not like it's not possible. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. But I think that how we approach this whole concept when it comes to dealing with this violence, this uptick in gun violence, the uptick in just violence in general in our neighborhoods, we have to look at it from a holistic approach. We're trying to approach everything and thinking police. The police have their jobs, but the community, we have to have our jobs. We have to help each other out. We have to help the community-based organizations that are in the community to understand what's going on so we can get proper results. I understand like the other officers are here from the mayor office, and they have the resources to help you all. You know the people that are in your community causing the trouble. But sometimes you can't approach the police with because they're going to approach it a different way. But you have to have somebody in your community that you can approach to address that issue. And like what we do with the conflict resolution, and then I'm a first responder. I respond to shootings and stabbings in 20032. That zip code is a lot different than this zip code, as you know. But it's an uptick in violence all across the city. But in that zip code, we're constantly responding to these shootings and stabbings. Like, this is not like a fun thing or a game. But the way that this has to come to a cease is about all, like this right here, all of y'all working together. Everything don't have to involve the police. Y'all have to look among y'all. So y'all have the resources. We just need order. It's everybody think, oh, we need more resources. MPD got 500 million. They okay. They okay. Hey, it's about us though. We have to look amongst each other in order to get this stuff done. Because as I respond to these shootings, talking to these family members that's just been shot at the hospital, all of these things, it's not a game. A lot of them are dealing with trauma, and we have to approach it in a conflict resolution way. But y'all have to come together. We're all the same. We all want peace. You think they enjoy living in housing, all these people, and enjoy, smelling the same thing y'all smelling when you talking about weed and all. They upset too, but they're dealing with it in a stance where they don't know how to approach it. Okay, too much trauma. But together, we have to talk to one another, communicate, let each other know what's going on because we can do it. It don't have to be all MPD.
So what's the resources so we can get the ball rolling?
I just want to say something because it does seem like we're huddling around one issue that I'd like to hear more from Councilmember Allen and the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And that we're looking at a problem that requires a two-pronged solution. Now, Commissioner Padro clearly pointed out the first prong of that. We need to increase the amount of patrols. That's a great solution for the short term. That second prong is early intervention, and what this sounds like the primary problem is youthful offenders.
Well, where's federal?
So what I'd like to hear, hang on. So what I'd like to hear is a little bit more from Councilman Allen and the Office of Neighborhood Safety on how best for early intervention to get these kids to change their behavior, as Assistant Chief Green mentioned.
But we can't discredit what he was saying and being involved in the community.
Yeah, like what do we do? I want to be more.
I think it actually parlays very well into what he's talking about. Because when we talk about how do we go, a crime is committed, and then we react to it. And then we spend a lot of time talking about what the system looks like once somebody, detectives are working to investigate a case, then an arrest gets made, and then what happens in the court, what happens in the jail. A large amount of it, that's reacting after the thing has happened. We really have to do so much more on the front end. And that's part of what the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement really focuses on. It's trying to get to the root cause of why violence takes place. Violence doesn't come out of nowhere, right? Violence comes out of a space, as Bob Van Action was talking about. Sometimes that comes out of desperation or frustration. Sometimes it comes out of trauma and violence that the individual has experienced themselves. In almost every case, when you're going to find somebody who has committed violence, they have received violence. They have experienced that a lot. So what the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement does is works in partnership. Neither one of these things is the only thing we do. We have to, as we've, I think, hopefully repeated over and over again, NPD is an incredibly important partner in all of this, but we can't expect them to do every single thing. So the ONE's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, focuses on that early intervention. Another aspect that we haven't really talked about, but I think is incredibly powerful. The ONE's Office has what's called a Pathways Cohort. They take about 20 to 25 young men. Oftentimes they are at risk of either committing violence or being the victims of violence. And they do deep, instructive work to help pull them off the street, help wrap services around them, and then move them into employment. that fundamentally alters and changes, I think, the trajectory of those individuals, as well as their friends, their family, and their entire community around that. The work that they do, also partnering with nonprofits and organizations, is incredibly important. And this office is also new. It's only been up for about a year and a half or so, 2 years. And so they are still growing and expanding. At the council, we have continued to put more money and more supports into helping them get going. But the type of work that you're talking about, when the lines of concerned men, on the ground, hard work, that is based and dependent upon credibility. It is one thing for me to walk in a suit and tie trying to talk to somebody. It's another thing for an officer with a badge. It's another thing for somebody who has credibility to be able to go in and talk to and meet people where they are, to try to help find other ways. It is one of the many things that we do, and that's why it's an important part. I'll certainly let the one's office kind of share more details on what they're doing, but it's incredibly important work.
Good evening again. I'm Enkanga Garrett. So just to give you a little bit of information about some of the programs that we offer. First, I think Councilmember Allen talked about our Pathways program, which is our flagship program where we work with cohorts of 25 young men who have felony records that involve gun charges. We take them through a very intense 9-week life skills and workforce development program where we are really delving into what has caused you to get involved in some of the things that you have gotten involved in and what has landed you in jail and to participate in some of the violence that you participated in. We have had a pretty great success rate. We've had 3 cohorts so far. This program has been one of the most transformational programs I have seen, in that they are being instructed. They're really delving into the mindset of behavior and change. There is mandatory behavior health, and sometimes they go in and they say, I don't want a session, and we say, okay, you got to come in and do something. So at first they just start drawing, and then all of a sudden it turns into, I can't wait to get to my session, because they're dealing with a lot of trauma. Afterwards, they go through a subsidized work program, and then we have had more than 60% go into unsubsidized, so that's long-term permanent. We also have a school-based initiative. Right now we're working with Anacostia. This is our pilot program. And then we also have the violence intervention program, where we have some of the IRA young men that Councilmember Allen talked about, who are doing exactly what you alluded to, sir, and really working with young people who were where they were. So in terms of Shaw, I think one of the things that we can do when we talk about identifying young people who are involved in robbery, young people who are really getting into some things that they shouldn't be, Mr. Dotson Roby is one of our internal violence interventionists, and he often works with young people and connects them to services and supports and kind of shepherds them through that process. He's worked with several young men, and we've seen some great successes with him. So if you have the names, or you know of organizations or individuals in this community that you are concerned about, please let us know. And then we can work with some of our nonprofit partners. Mr. Roby loves working with the younger population, and we can certainly work with some of our partners to get them connected. He also serves as a mentor for many young people that come across our desk. So we'd love to get connected with you and just hear about some of the cases of young people that you're concerned about.
I'd like to add just one critical thing. So, as people have said, the police department has its role and has their lane, but for the most part, we approach this work from a public health, community-based, community-driven standpoint, which means that we do not provide information to the police. So we get information about crime stats and alerts. That is a one-way information flow. So it's very important that people are clear about that. We do not give information to the police in terms of the individuals or the communities or the families with which we work. So that's critically important for the legitimacy, for transparency, and for the integrity of the work, as well as for the safety of folks who work either with community-based organizations or work with our agency for their safety and their integrity and credibility in the community.
Yes, young woman in the back who's been waiting for a while.
First, I want to say I've been living in Shaw for a while now, and my neighbor, and I won't say her name because she'll strangle me, but she has been here for 47 years, and she sings the praises of the violence interventionists in the community, and she has told me all about 5th and 7th Street. And all I can say is thank you for that work. I know that the situation that we're in right now, as unpleasant as it is, would be a hell of a lot worse if it wasn't for the work that you're already doing. And there is no but there. Thank you. I am a parent of a child that attends Seton Elementary School. I see a lot of other parents from Seton Elementary School in this room. My question is, we all go to work, we all go home to our families. We're busy, but we're here because we care and we want to know give us something to do. I have a camera. The police have used it. I'm friends with all the neighborhood cops. And by the way, we called him RoboCop because of his posture, not because he acted at all like a robot. Exquisite posture. I miss him every day. But like you were saying that the U.S. Attorney's Office is not a partner. Who do we talk to? Because these people are fired up. So who do we talk to at the U.S. Attorney's Office to say, this is not acceptable? Who do we talk to in the mayor's office? All right, you gave us your phone number. I've got your phone number. But to be fair, I'm not impressed. She does not show up to things. She did a walkabout in Kennedy Rec at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. That's not to observe what people were complaining about. That's not cute to me. Show up at 7 p.m. on a Saturday. That's what I want to see. So who do we talk to? Give us a list, give us phone numbers, we're all ready. Let's go.
I'll try to make a short list because I know there's also a lot of other hands.
And let's put it on Facebook group. Let's get it out there. There's people here that don't have the privilege of being here because they're home with their kids. My kid's fine. Wherever.
Understanding that there is no one lever to push. It's all of them.
Yes, all of us. Give us all of us.
So I do believe that you've got to focus with. We need to work with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I think I heard either Commissioner Padro or Commissioner Marriott talk about the USAO might be at the next meeting.
How?
That's an important name.
How do we do it?
I'd probably ask the commissioners to respond to that. I think you have a USAO liaison that partners there. So that's perhaps we can write that down and get that out to them.
Make sure the mayor.
Wendy Poolhouse? Wendy Poolhouse, y'all.
But here's the other part. Again, recognizing it's a lot of things. I have been over at Kennedy Rec when it closes at night. And we've got...
It doesn't close anymore, Charles. It's unlocked.
Right. The inside, but I'll follow up with you on that. I've gone in there when I've got young people that are in there for a tutoring program, essentially, at the end of the day. And at 9 o'clock at night, I've got young people, this is the only place where they're getting a hot meal. It's the only place where they have an adult who's trying, and probably is overtaxed, has way too many kids they're trying to help out at the same time. And then it's time for the rec center to close, and all those individuals, the young people, walk on out. And then what happens next? 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old. Now they're walking home. We need to work with, to the point Commissioner Nigro was talking about from like a facility standpoint, DPR, we've got to push to have more programming at DPR. Those kids need more help. They need more supports because they are either at risk themselves or we're not doing enough to make sure that we're protecting them as they grow up. Because I don't want
So all there. So DPR, who we call?
That'd be the director, Director Hunter, but that's also with the mayor's office, because ultimately DPR answers to the mayor. Those are like just 2 quick hits. I know there's a lot of other hands, but I'd be more than happy to partner with every single person in this room. Let's collaboratively think through the different places we push. Part of that's also with me. You help hold me accountable. If you like what I'm talking about, great. If you don't like what I'm talking about, push back on me. That's part of my job, is to help respond to you and to work with you as well. I think that goes for our commissioners as well. I think that at the end of the day, we all share the exact same goals. So we're all going to pull together. Sometimes we push and pull on each other on how we get there. But that's part of our job, is we stood up and decided to take this on.
And I would also say, somewhere in the back corner there, I apologize because there wasn't a table, under your butt is a stack of phone lists of the 3rd District, which includes information for our community prosecutor. So there's a community prosecutor assigned to every police district, and the contact information is on that. If you can't find what seat I left it on, It's on our website, on the 3rd District. Every district has a phone list on the website, a roster that includes our community prosecutors' information. So you go to mpdc.dc.gov, search for 3D, it's all in there.
The community prosecutor for the 3rd District is Anita LaRue.
There you go.
She's an assistant United States attorney. Her phone number is area code 240-278-4342, 240-278-4342. Her email is Anita, A-N-I-T-A, .LaRue, L-A-R-U-E, at usdoj.gov. Anita LaRue, Anita.LaRue at usdepartmentofjustice.gov.
One of the other things you can do is join Moms Demand Action. We actually met with all of the city council and the mayor last week. This meeting, we're pushing on community partners like over here. Thank you for your work. And many other community partners, we're pushing on that holistic approach that we're talking about. But it's not just one lever, it's all the levers. And so if you just want to,
just a mom.
Right, and it's mothers and others. You don't have to have a kid, you don't have to be a mom. So you can text READY to 64433 and you'll get synced up with our chapter. We meet every month. We met here last month. So and we'll be here.
I just want to thank you.
And one of the things that we're doing also in the mayor's office is we're working with those faith-based community organizations in general. When you're having those block parties, if you know people who need services, we've brought out the DOE workforce on Rose Bus. You might have seen it outside of the library. We brought out DBH, the Department of Behavioral Health. We brought out Human Services. So we're here to partner with you. If you have any ideas, work with us so we can get the services out to folks. And then I have the email address for Wendy over at the U.S. Attorney's Office. If you want to take it down, her name is Wendy, W-E-N-D-Y, .Pohlhaus, P-O-H-L-H-A-U-S, at USDOJ.gov.
What is her role?
Yes, sir.
Pohlhaus is the executive assistant to the U.S. Attorney's Office, so she is 3rd in command, so she is your district liaison supervisor.
Okay, so between her and Ms. Anita LaRue with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
She is Anita LaRue's supervisor.
Okay, so those are the two people whose phones we need to blow up and publicly pressure and bring public embarrassment to for not actually enforcing the laws that we as district residents have seen fit to enact.
Absolutely. So for the Department of Parks and Recreation, it's great to reach out to Director Hunter. However, he does have members on his team that are responsible for your concerns with regards to programming. So with regards to programming, your point of contact is going to be his chief of staff. That's, I'll wait for the pens and tablets to get ready. It's Eli, E-L-Y, .Ross, R-O-S-S, at dc.gov. And also his chief of external affairs. He is the one that actually has what were previously called our roving leaders. His name is Tommy Jones, and that's T-O-M-M-I-E .Jones, the number 2 at dc.gov. So again, you'd like to reach out to Eli Ross and Tommy Jones if you have concerns about programming and or any other issues at the Kennedy Rec Center.
I'd like to just...
Yes, sir, and he's waiting a while in his flannel.
Nice, fashionable flannel. So I'm biased in asking this question because I have a baby girl, and my wife and her dodged bullets the other day when the shooting went on, and it just destroyed me. So just take that for what it's worth.
Speak up. Speak up.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting sick with a cold. Councilmember Allen, you mentioned you want to be held accountable. So I'm going to ask you. You have given passes, as far as I'm concerned, to Metro fare evaders, to other people. It seems like, with all due respect, you were soft on crime. And it seems like now you, with your tweet the other day, you had a shooting outside of your house, and miraculously, you seem to now be concerned about crime. I'm just wondering, your actions and the actions of the council, does that not contribute to assailants not being held accountable? Because my wife and my daughter would not like to be shot, and it just seems like you take this, and I'm pretty liberal, just seems you take this sort of like radically liberal position, and I just want to know, like, can't people be held accountable for the crimes that they do? And where are you coming for this? Like, don't you have a responsibility to this? And it just seems like miraculously now the crime is in front of your house, you seem to be aware of it. So I just want to get your answer to this.
I'm really sorry that your wife and your child experienced that.
Yeah, she almost got shot, so.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that happened. I don't know why, but I'm happy to just walk through all the different steps that we've taken in terms of why that would be your perception. I respect that is your perception, but let me walk through a couple of things that we've done. I tried to outline earlier, from an accountability perspective, we have increased penalties, increased minimums when it comes to gun crimes. We have focused on the accountability effort to make sure that our laws are tough. We have put in more tools and mechanisms to get guns, illegal guns, off the street. This is nothing new. This has been for years' worth. I don't know if you follow me on Twitter a lot. There's a lot of tweets about crime that I do. So I came home the other day to about 22 gunshots right outside my own house. It's not the first time either. I have two kids, I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. I have multiple times, as I hear gunfire from my living room, tried to convince my 7-year-old they're fireworks. For any parent in this room, you probably had to try to do the same thing. It is not something that any of us welcome or ever want to do. I am the victim of gun violence. I carry a scar on the back of my head from when somebody robbed me for $2 in my wallet, held a gun up, hit me in the back of the head, and the gun went off right next to my head. I take it very seriously. I take it very personally. I also, though, have to look at how do we work on solutions. The solutions include accountability. The solutions include making sure, as I try to implore folks to focus on the U.S. Attorney's Office, it is a black hole as to what happens after these 2,000 guns are pulled off the street, yet I keep hearing from officers, they see the same person over and over again. That's not being sought. I also, though, believe you have to get your root causes. We will not create a safe and a just city if the only thing we are doing is focus on the accountability side of a ledger. We have to get in front of it. We have to find out what is going on in a community or a neighborhood where a beef exists. Why is there conflict between 7th and 9th Street? What's the root cause of it? How do you work toward a ceasefire? There will be times I will not be able to walk into a room and pull everybody together and say, guys, let's get to a ceasefire. MPD won't be able to do that. It is other partners and community partners who have a different type of and a different level of credibility that get that job done. None of it works in isolation. All of it has to work together. And so that is my approach. I respect if somebody doesn't agree with that, but that is my approach, and that's what I've tried to talk about consistently. So I hope that helps answer your question. I'd be more than happy to talk to you afterwards as well. And again, I'm really sorry that that's what you and your family experienced, and I know that others in this room have experienced it as well.
I appreciate your response, I really do.
Yes, sir.
We've had someone with their arm up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, just one more.
And I'm not here to criticize, I'm here to applaud everyone in this room. MPD, the mayor's office, everyone has stepped up their game. They've been doing this for a long time. So I just want to thank everyone for being here and being pulling this meeting together so quickly, being so responsive to everything. I want to applaud you, not criticize all your efforts. To that note, my question is for all of us. What are we going to do as a community? I think it's been emphasized from various different groups here that it relies on us to also say something, think of 3 things that we're all going to do tonight. We're all here fired up. We've been impacted by this in some way. I lived in Shaw for 5 years. I'm sad it's taken 5 years for me to get this involved in the community, to meet my neighbors. So 3 things I'm going to do is meet you after this. I want to get to know your name. I'm going to say hi to the cops like you recommended. I already have the security cameras. They've helped me catch a package theft in conjunction with someone else's camera, and I'm also going to start a Facebook group or find a Facebook group if there is one, if anyone would like to let me know. I think we need to stay informed, we need to stick together, we need to communicate, and also to that point, when you see something, say something. If you see something good, say something. We need to use our voices for good and just, praise all the work that's being done. I've seen so much good happen in the past week, and I want to, again, praise that, and just let's continue to make Shaw a happy place. I think that's why we're all here, is we love Shaw. So let's continue. I know it's not an easy battle, it's not going to happen overnight, but little things you can do here and there. So my question is for you to all go home tonight and think of what you're going to do on a micro level to support these efforts that they've been telling us. So.
The Facebook group you started?
I don't know if there is one, if it exists already, or we've been using Nextdoor, but it's very reactive and it's very hard to communicate.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Hightower, and as the former president of Gibson Plaza, it was infested with drugs, and Rayful Evans' days didn't make it even better. But I really, as I listen tonight, you know, I come through Shaw because I still have to. I deal with youth, etc. But what I really must say to everybody here, as a proud 62-year-old Black American native, you know what? I commend everybody that is here, and I concur with the commissioner here, Pedro, about what needs to happen. But what you don't do, you don't accept second and third level people being here without the top level. Now, if Councilmember Charles Allen can be here, so can the mayor of the District of Columbia be here. And also, so can the chief of police. This is not what you accept. You accept the people that you put into office to represent your best interests. And at this point in time, crime is critical. It doesn't stop now, it's going to elevate. The other issue is that, you know, hey, what's his name? Mr. Newsham. He needs to be here. Muriel needs to be here. So your next meeting, ANC6E, should include not only Councilmember Allen, who's doing a good job, but also mandate that the mayor is here. Forget calling her third level people. Bring her here. Bring here also the chief of police. And you know what? Because if you don't, what they're going to do is go right back and tell her, and she'll send them back again. We need to mandate that the mayor of the District of Columbia and the chief of police are here, and tell them that we're not leaving until there is resolution. Logan is right next door to you all. So when they shoot you, they're shooting me. Okay? And if you don't stand up now, no one will. And do not, and the other thing, when you talk about intervention and prevention, I want to know, even with Alliance of Concerned Men, where are the Ward 2 people from, the Shaw people who still should be Ward 2? Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Don't get me talking about Jack right now. But my Shaw comrades who really, it makes me so angry, to think about when you all talk about coming here, and a lot of you all, your organizations are dealing with 7 and 8 and 5, which you need to be, because the crime is more on a very upscale level. But you're going to have to recruit people from Ward 6 to be a part of Alliance of Concerned Men. So don't play, because High was here. You know, I'm being honest. Don't come over here talking about you coming into Ward 6, the historic Shaw community, and not recruit some people that can be a part of your organization. Because we too can talk to some of the same people, okay? Because I know some of the mothers too, but on the same. And I'm serious. I'm serious. And then there is a community where there's an Orange Hat community over there where Leroy Thorpe is, where they do go out and they do police. You probably need to have Commissioner Pedro to make sure that comes back in this community so that people can be engaged. And the engagement is throughout perpetuity. You don't want something to start for a minute and end for a minute. You still want to have it periodically. So MPD doing the foot patrol, everybody needs to be able to see you. But I do understand that Ward 8 got a lot of deaths, and they need to resolve that too. They do need to resolve it. Because Councilmember Trayon White is always out there when somebody dead. Okay? But here, we are so proud of the commissioners who are 6E, but I'm here to say to everybody, do not allow yourself to be subjected to second and third tier level elected officials. That's not who you voted for. We know who we voted for. I didn't, but you know who you voted for. So you need to make sure that she comes here and she commits and carries out herself. Because these people that's representing the mayor's office or the Department of Employment Services are not the directors, And they are not our highest chief executive in the District of Columbia. God bless y'all, and I'll be back for the next. And thank you so much, Commissioner Padro. I really appreciate
The president gets the flag.
Hold it down just a second, the back so you can hear her.
In certain areas, they are in the Shaw area. For the most part, they're usually on our evening and our day work shift. But we do have some that cover the midnights. Depends on staffing.
Okay, so they are out. Why aren't they recognizing these who are committing these crimes like
You can't hear the question. So the question is, why aren't the officers who are out there walking the footpaths recognizing the individuals who are committing crime?
Yeah, they're constantly out there. And
So-
like prevention, like why are they not?
So that's a great question. So again, there are officers who are visible, who are out and about, who are on patrol, but just because someone has previously committed a crime does not give us carte blanche to go up and stop them, to pat them, to do things. There are certain things in the law that they can do. So hopefully that visibility of the officer is that deterrent. Now, when we do have individuals that we know that have previous histories or are on some level of court-ordered supervision, we tend to give those individuals some extra attention. We may go up and try and have a conversation with them. We may try and go see what they're doing or following what they're doing. Just perfect example. Today is Wednesday. Monday afternoon, after the shooting that we had on Sunday, we've been looking through some video and looking with regards to the shooting of the 17-year-old that got shot on P Street. And officers who've seen some of that video saw in some of those pictures individuals that they know from the neighborhood. We don't know what their role, if any, was in this. They may have just been in the neighborhood, but they saw them on that video. So these officers on Monday saw one of those individuals and went to go speak with him. When he took off from them, they finally were able to stop him and found a loaded handgun in his compression shorts. So that is an example of where we knew he was near enough to the scene of a shooting. We want to have a conversation with him. Was he a witness? Is he a suspect? Did he know nothing about it? And when officers went to go engage with this individual, he took off running and was stopped. So that is an example of when we do know that somebody who has a history or somebody that has a behavior, a criminal history in our neighborhood, that's somebody that we're going to give some attention to. And another weapon off the street.
Excuse me, I don't know, what was the question?
About how we deal with individuals that we know have historically done criminal activity. If we have officers out there, what are we doing to prevent those individuals from reoffending? I think is probably the best way to summarize that.
So we can maybe use that as an kind of an illustration of what one of the problems is that I think the council member brought up a minute ago and we talked about, and that is what happens after an individual, especially one with a history of violence or having guns, is caught in possession of an illegal firearm. I'm not even talking about when they fired it, but when many times that the police catch an individual with a history in possession of an illegal firearm. What happens then? Because what we are hearing is that a lot of times what happens is that the police do their job, it goes into the system, and then the prosecutor's office does nothing, and then they're back on the street and they have a gun again in the morning.
One of the big things we don't know, and that's part of what we're trying to make sure you understand. You heard Commander Emerman kind of run through a couple of different stats where some cases did move forward, others we don't know. We don't know what the resolution of a case was. We didn't know if it was it pled down. Oftentimes what happens is, as part of a prosecution, that gun possession may get pled down to something else. The case may get dropped completely. The case may get dismissed completely. If I'm going to do my job from an oversight perspective to try to understand what is happening when these guys are making stops and pulling over 2,000 illegal guns off our streets, I need to be able to understand.
So what do we need to be able to do to get the data? Is the U.S. Attorney's Office not providing it? Are they stonewalling?
What about a FOIA? It's been requested many, many times.
Okay, so I mean, what can the public do? I think we're all interested in applying pressure.
I think one of the big things is you tell the U.S. Attorney's Office this should be public information that you want to know this. From an oversight perspective, we need to know that. When the Attorney General prosecutes on the juvenile side, they report out the resolution of those cases. I think it needs to be more public about what happens. Now, there will be times when the prosecutor needs to have discretion. There may be certain circumstances where a prosecution needs to make certain decisions, but we need to be able to know that. From my perspective as oversight, I need to be able to know that. And right now, we don't. And I think that creates a big problem, and that's one of the things that I'd like for us to be able to help.
Can somebody share the appropriate request that we could put into a FOIA to the DOJ? What, if somebody could share with us the exact information that's needed and the right language for requesting that information, any number of us could write a FOIA request to DOJ saying we'd like the following information as a function of FOIA. But I don't know what to ask for, I'm too
You
stupid.
could get some of that information by forming that court watch organization that I spoke about earlier, working with the United States Attorney's Office, and kind of following those cases so that you can see what the sentences are, if the case was dismissed, following it through its steps, and using that United States community.
What is that?
One of the pieces that we're also doing, it's absolutely a tool, but that puts a lot on you. One of the things that we're trying to do, we partner with something called the CJCC, which is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, where all of us all sit together on this. And one of the things that we funded in the budget this year is what's called essentially an NPD feed, where we're being able to, once this takes effect and they get this system set up, we will be able to now have data that tracks and talks to all the different systems. Remember, we have a local part of our judicial system, and then years ago, the district made this bargain, and we lost control of a huge federal part. I cannot compel a federal agency to do something, but we are pulling so that we can start to have the thread of all this data, so that we can pull court information, U.S. attorneys, and we can now follow a case from arrest all the way through to sentencing. And that's going to give us a much better picture. That's still probably a year away until all those different data pieces are all talking together in one database.
And on an individual case-by-case basis, yes, as the councilman said, it's going to be labor-intensive for you, but an individual case-by-case basis is available public information on the DC Court's website.
It is.
So when we post on our daily arrest report, an arrest of an individual carrying a pistol without a license, and you jot that down on a scrap of paper, you could conceivably check that periodically through that system. Again, that's not the best way, that's labor intensive for you. But there are some avenues. I think these other opportunities are hopefully going to be more efficient in getting that information out.
That would track through the U.S. court system as well as the D.C. legal system? Like if whatever case number I find for that person, I could follow the same
through. The DC court system
through.
has a search option by name or by case and docket numbers.
Perfect.
Our court is federal, so the D.C. Superior Court is not a local court. It's actually a federal court, but from that website, you can do some of that.
You can jump off. Got it.
I want to bring in just jumps and wait a while.
So the one question, and it kind of fits in with a lot of things that were being talked about, especially when it was a question a couple minutes ago about the bean pops and everything. So the one thing that struck me, unless I misunderstood, was that there was a request from the mayor's office for more bean pops that wasn't funded for this fiscal year that we just started. Why is that? Like, why? I know that there's always a trade-off in the budget, but everyone has said that that would be a key component. So why was it not funded?
Well, and this is where...
Can it be changed now? I mean...
Yeah, well, this is going to be where Chief Green and I are going to probably describe it differently. The budget that we passed approved every FTE that the mayor requested for MPD. MPD's budget is $500 million every year. We did take, the council I've never seen an agency ever go through a council budget process with their budget completely as requested.
Right.
There is a small portion that we took in what is called vacancy savings. So within an agency, you have vacant positions, and they just kind of float there, and at the end, they kind of roll up into savings. And we did take that. We put that into our violence prevention work. We put that into the community-based grants. That is that. I fully respect, Chief's going to present that and say that is a reduction from MPD's request, and it is, out of a $500 million budget. But we approved every FTE that MPD asked for. Now, when it comes to having officers walk the beat, be on bike, there is nothing stopping. I think you've heard MPD talk about having officers be on foot and be on bike. There's nothing stopping them to tell an officer, okay, I want a foot patrol, I want a bike patrol. It's part of their management decision as how they do that. And I think you've heard them say, they're making sure that they've got officers on foot, on their bike, on their tactical units. So that's how that works.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to start off by saying thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for the work you're doing in the community. You're awesome. Your work is not going unnoticed. But I did have a direct question of what is the protocol when we see these crews on the street, when we see people laid out on the sidewalk, when we see people drinking in front of our buildings or in front of our homes? Who should we call if we're not, if the call time is like 6 minutes for the police and we don't want to over-involve the police? Like, what can we do as neighbors seeing this on a regular basis? Like, for me to have to step over a body to get into my building is not okay, but that's probably not something I should be calling you about. So what community partner can I call? Who can I engage? Like, how can I be part of the solution? Instead of just calling the police.
I can add one piece and certainly let the commander talk about it as well. For somebody who is going to be passed out on the sidewalk, passed out in a doorway.
Not necessarily even passed out, just lounging.
Laid out.
Yeah, just laid out, like.
One of the things that I think NPD tries really hard to do is evaluate, obviously, when they come up on a scene, what is the appropriate action that they're going to take there? Is that something that they want to actually arrest someone for? And so what all comes with that? That can obviously be charging for that individual. It also means the officer is now off that beat. So the officers are going to make strategic decisions based on what they think is the appropriate action to take. And I think that's, I support that. I think that's a good thing for the officers to be able to have that discretion as they're going to think about that. It gets back to the issue too of what is it we're expecting NPD to be able to do. If I've got somebody who might be laid out because of substance use disorder, mental or behavioral health, I can't just look at the police as a solution to that problem. So what we've tried to do is start partnering mental and behavioral health specialists with NPD. Our Department of Behavioral Health is launched, and they just launched this about a month or so ago, more rapid response teams. If there are specific areas where you're seeing that type of thing, I think partnering with the mayor's office and let us know about that, because we can get that information back to DBH, because that's an important part of that tool. It's something that DBH is working on, and I think is a very strong part of what is the appropriate response we want to have based on that situation.
And I would say, we do get calls for that sort of stuff, but we will come out, because if you call, we come. If they need medical assistance, East Fire and EMS is going to handle it. But you can also, as Councilmember said, we've got some great partnerships with the Mayor's Office of Community Relations Services, and they can then sometimes, when we make referrals to them, or the community makes referrals to them, arrange and get those other government services, like the Councilmember was saying, behavioral health, get some of those social service folks in the community to try and help that individual out. Unfortunately, a lot of those services are voluntary. And if this individual is just happy laying out on a sidewalk and doesn't want any help, then tomorrow he's going to be out there again on that sidewalk not wanting any help. But it's getting them, sometimes they don't know that these services are available to them, sometimes getting them in touch with those services. So police are a resource, and the mayor's office is also going to help us get some of those resources out too.
So should there be a call to the non-emergency number or a call to 911?
I think so when you call 911, that doesn't actually go straight to the police. It goes to something called the Office of Unified Communications, and they're trained. Sometimes they keep working on training, but what they're trying to do is get as much information from you as possible to figure out what the correct level of dispatch. So that is an appropriate place to call. And then NPD, if they respond, they're also trained to be looking at what is it I got in front of me, and how do I bring in other partners as well. Because I have not met many officers who want to arrest someone because they're in some type of mental health crisis. That is not something that they're wanting to do. They want to bring in their other partners to try to help solve that.
We got time for a very, very quick question.
Very brief. And that's a good segue to my brief comment. As a constituent and a taxpayer and a DC resident, I want to sort of emphasize that there's obviously an acute problem which needs to be addressed as the emergency that it is. But it's also a systemic problem, and I think that I want to lift up and give my interest in more of a comprehensive approach that addresses the systemic problems to ensure a more durable solution. And I think in the presentation, I came in about 7:30, so forgive me if I missed this, but I think even the order of the presentation of, for example, the first responders for the Alliance, I mean, it shouldn't be out of sequence. They're part of the issue. They're part of the solution, and I think that their profile needs to be raised. They need to be resourced. They need to be funded. This organization here that the three here are working towards, it needs to be funded. It needs to be resourced. It needs to be integrated as a total solution. We're not going to mass incarcerate our way out of this issue. There are systemic issues. We all sort of know what they are, and they need to be incorporated at a policy level and at the budget level. And one thing that I didn't hear that I'm involved in that I think might be helpful is mediation, conflict resolution. You know, people need forms to, conflicts are normal. There needs to be forms and mechanisms and skills to resolve the conflicts. There's organizations out here that ply in that trade, and they need to be a part of the solution. Last thing, the private sector. There's a lot of money being made in this city. There's a lot of people drinking, a lot of people having fun, a lot of patios, a lot of requests go to the ANC for a space to be improved. They have a role, they have an interest, they have skin in the game. They need to ante up as well. The private sector needs to be involved in this.
I don't mean to be rude, sir.
I'm done.
Okay.
The private sector needs to be
I
involved.
apologize.
Preventative resources need to be done, needs to be staffed, needs to be researched.
I have a phone number for community
We're getting
mediation.
booted out of here at about 9 o'clock, which is 9 o'clock. But before we leave, I just want to make a couple comments. Tomorrow night, we are having a second meeting, so if you have more questions, you have more concerns, we're having another meeting at United House of Prayer at 6 o'clock. And that will be at 1721 7th Street. If you can't make it, right across the street, if you can't make it to that meeting, we are having another meeting on October 21st at 7 p.m. at the New Bedford Baptist Church. That is at 1739 9th Street Northwest. Both of these meetings will be published on our website, ANC6E.org. I want to thank Councilmember Allen, our members of the MPD for coming. Reach out to your ANC commissioners. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you.